cold millionaire agreed to one last blind date. The single dad who walked into her life changed her. Nadia Cross had not wanted to come. She had said that clearly, twice, in the same week. She had said it over the phone on Tuesday when her best friend Layla first brought it up, and she had said it again on Thursday over lunch, pushing her salad around the plate like a woman who had already made her decision and was simply waiting for the world to catch up. But Layla had a way of not hearing the word no when she believed she was doing something for someone's own good. And so here Nadia was, sitting at a corner bar she had never loved, wearing a dress she had not chosen for herself, with a glass of water in front of her that she had no intention of drinking. 38 years old, 2 companies built from the ground up. One sold at a valuation that made financial journalists use words like remarkable. The second sold 3 years later for twice that. She sat on 2 boards, advised 4 startups, and had been featured in a magazine the previous spring under a headline that called her the most decisive woman in tech. She had framed it in her office not out of vanity, but because it reminded her, on the days she forgot, what she was. Decisive. That was the word they always used. What they did not write about, what no profile had ever captured in its careful paragraphs, was that she had not made a single personal decision in 11 years that had not ended cleanly. Not cleanly like it was easy. Cleanly like she had made sure of it. She ended things before they ended her. She packed her feelings into small, manageable containers and stored them somewhere she could not reach without a long drive, and a very good reason. She had dated, of course. She was not a person who ran from people. She was a person who calculated the exit before she walked through the entrance. 11 blind dates in the last 3 years, all arranged by Layla, all meeting the criteria: educated, employed, emotionally functional, at least on paper, and all ending the same way. 1 drink, polite conversation. She left first. Layla called them failures. Nadia called them outcomes. She had agreed to this one under conditions. She had laid them out over that Thursday lunch with the calm precision of someone negotiating a clause. 1 drink, no dinner, no second drink, no suggestion of dinner disguised as a second drink. She chose the venue. She sat facing the door. If the conversation hit a wall in the first 15 minutes, she was not obligated to wait it out. Layla had agreed to all of it because she had no choice, and because she believed, the way she always believed, the way Nadia had once believed before she stopped, that this time would be different. Nadia did not believe that. She had not believed that in a long time. But she had come. Not because she was hopeful, not because some quiet part of her was tired of going home to a glass and steel apartment where everything was exactly where she had left it. She had come because she loved Layla, and because Layla had looked at her across that lunch table with an expression so full of something genuine that Nadia had not been able to say no a third time. She checked her watch. 7:54. The bar was warm. October in Chicago had not yet settled into the cold that would come in November, but there was a bite in the air outside that made the bar feel like something deliberate, like a place designed to make people want to stay. She did not want to stay. She was already planning the route home in her head, calculating traffic, thinking about the document she had left open on her laptop and the draft she needed to review before morning. The water in front of her had a thin ring of condensation forming at the base. She moved it slightly to the left. A couple at the next table were laughing about something. The woman had her head thrown back and her hand on the man's arm, and they were both laughing the way people laugh when they have forgotten anyone else is in the room. Nadia looked at them for exactly 3 seconds and then looked away. Her phone buzzed. Layla. He's sweet, I promise. Give it a real chance. She put the phone face down on the table. 8 o'clock came and went. She had not built 2 companies by being the kind of person who made a fuss about small things, but she was, quietly, a person who noticed them. And she noticed that she was sitting at a bar at 8:03 on a Friday evening, with a glass of water she did not want, waiting for a man she had not asked to meet, doing something she had not wanted to do for a reason that had nothing to do with her own heart, and everything to do with the fact that she could not bear to disappoint the one person on earth who still looked at her like she was capable of more than she was currently doing. She was, in this particular moment, a woman waiting. She did not like the feeling. She had arranged her life very carefully so that she would not have to feel it often. The door opened. She did not look up immediately. There had been 6 people through that door in the last 10 minutes, and none of them had been him, and she had trained herself over years not to look up with expectation, because looking up with expectation was a form of wanting, and wanting was where things got complicated. She kept her eyes on the table for a count of 3, then looked. He was late, 17 minutes to be exact. He was tall, broader through the shoulders than she expected from the one photograph Layla had shown her, with dark hair that needed cutting, and a coat that was doing its job mostly through good intentions. There was a safety pin near the top button, holding the zipper together, where it had clearly given up. He was scanning the room with the expression of a man who was doing his best and knew it, and was prepared to own it anyway. He spotted her. She could tell the exact moment, because something in his face shifted from searching to found, and he walked toward her with the kind of unhurried directness that she had not expected. Not nervous, not putting on a performance of not being nervous, just walking over, like a person going somewhere they had decided to go. He slid into the seat across from her. "I'm Dylan," he said. "I want to say the sitter situation was a one-off, but that would be lying before we've even introduced ourselves. So." He held out his hand. She shook it. "Nadia," she said. "I know," he said. "Layla showed me a photo, which I told her was unnecessary. She did it anyway." "She does things anyway," Nadia said. "Our mutual weakness," he said. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable exactly. The kind of pause that happens when two people are taking a reading of each other and are both aware that is what they are doing. A waiter appeared, and Dylan ordered a beer without looking at the menu, the way a person orders something they actually want, rather than something designed to impress. She noticed that. She noticed the coat, too, the safety pin. He caught her looking. "It's structural," he said, touching the pin. "Load-bearing." She did not smile. She came close. She put it away. "How long have you been in Chicago?" he asked. 12 years. "You're not from here." "No," she said. "London, originally. I came for a job and stayed for reasons I rearranged afterward." "Rearranged afterward," he repeated, not mocking, just turning the phrase over like he found it interesting. "That's a very honest way of putting it." She had not meant it to be honest. She had meant it to be brief. The fact that it had landed as honest was a small, strange thing she filed away without knowing why. "Where are you from?" she asked. "Georgia, originally," he said. "But Chicago got me 12 years ago too. Different reasons, same staying." Something moved in his expression when he said it. Just slightly. Something that lived on the other side of the easy answer. She saw it and did not reach for it. Not yet. "What do you do?" he asked. She gave him the version she gave at events. Clean, efficient, built companies, sold companies, board work, advisory roles. 20 seconds, no more. The version that answered the question without opening a door. He listened. His beer arrived and he wrapped both hands around it and listened. And when she finished, he did not say what most people said. He did not say impressive or wow or I've heard of you. He looked at her for a moment, and then he said, "Do you like it?" She looked at him. 4 words. Do you like it? Not do you love it? Not is it everything you dreamed? Not the question people asked when they wanted to know how much money she had made. Just whether she liked it. Whether it made her feel good to do it. Whether, at the end of the day, it gave her something she wanted. She opened her mouth. She closed it. She picked up her water glass and took a sip of the water she had not planned to drink, and she sat with the question for a moment that stretched just slightly past comfortable, and the honest and slightly alarming thing was that she could not find a clean answer. She could find achievements, she could find milestones, she could find numbers that meant something in rooms full of people who spoke that language. But do you like it? She had not been asked that in 11 years. That's a complicated question, she said. Most real ones are, he said, and took a drink of his beer, and did not press her. And that, the not pressing, was the thing that made her stay past the 1 drink mark without quite deciding to. She found herself ordering something she actually wanted, something cold, with ice she would not touch but liked having there. She found herself asking him questions that were not interview questions. She found herself listening to the answers in a way that did not involve planning what to say next. The bar got louder around them and she did not notice because she was paying attention to something for the first time in a long time. She did not know what to call it yet. She did not try. Outside, the October night had gone fully cold. She left the bar at 10:14, 16 minutes later than she had budgeted for one drink and a polite exit. She walked to her car, and she sat in it for a moment before starting the engine. The city moved around her, lights and people and the particular hum of a Friday night carrying everyone somewhere. She thought about the question, "Do you like it?" She started the car. She drove home. She did not rebook the appointment she had canceled. She sat on her couch in the quiet of her apartment with its neutral walls and its precise arrangements, and thought about a man with a safety pin holding his coat together who had asked her the only question nobody had thought to ask. She did not know what it meant. She knew she was not going to stop thinking about it. The following 3 weeks happened in the way things happen when nobody is admitting they are happening. Layla and Dylan's sister, a sharp and cheerful woman named Carrie, had been messaging each other since approximately 24 hours after the bar, which Nadia discovered later and chose not to comment on. What mattered was the practical result. There were 2 more meetings that were dressed up as coincidences but were not. A coffee near her office on a Tuesday that she agreed to because she was walking past the place anyway, which was technically true and also not the reason. A Saturday afternoon at a bookshop on the north side where he was apparently browsing and she was apparently doing the same, which was a lie they both maintained with complete mutual understanding. She was not someone who did coincidences. She was someone who read the data and knew what it meant. But there was something about not naming it that felt necessary just then, like a plant that needed to be in the dark a little longer before it was ready for the window. The 3rd time she saw him, Priya was there. This was not planned, or rather, it was planned in the sense that the sitter had canceled, again, for reasons involving a fever and a last-minute text at 6 in the evening, and Dylan had called her to explain and give her the easy exit, and she had said the words that surprised both of them equally. "Bring her." There was a pause on the line. "You sure?" he said. "I said it, didn't I?" she said. Which was not warmth exactly, but was, for Nadia, the functional equivalent. They met at a diner on the west side, the kind of place with red booths and laminated menus, and a pie display in a glass case by the counter. Priya Hayes was 7 years old and arrived wearing a t-shirt that read, "I am the storm," in bold letters, and carrying a stuffed octopus with 8 arms of different colors. Dylan introduced her as his daughter. Priya introduced herself, and then immediately introduced the octopus. "This is Gerald," she said. "Hello, Gerald," Nadia said. She was surprised by how easily that came out. Priya examined her, not the way adults examine each other, sideways and with plausible deniability. The way a 7-year-old examines someone. Directly, with total focus, like a very small scientist who has not yet learned that staring is considered impolite. "You have sad eyes," Priya said, "but your shoes are really nice." Dylan started to say something. Nadia held up one hand. "She's right about both," she said. Priya seemed satisfied with this. She climbed into the booth, settled Gerald against the wall, and opened the menu with the serious expression of a person who intended to make the most important decision of the evening. "She wants the pancakes," Dylan said to the waiter, without Priya having said anything. "She always wants the pancakes. She reads the menu every time to make sure nothing has changed." "Things change," Priya said, without looking up. "They do," he agreed. Nadia watched this exchange. The easy way they spoke to each other. The way he knew what she would want before she said it. The way she argued with him in small, comfortable ways that meant she trusted him completely. It was its own language, and she was sitting at the table where it was spoken, and she found she did not feel like an outsider so much as a person who had arrived late to something and was trying to find her place without making a scene. She did fine with children in theory. In the abstract, she had never actively avoided them. It was more that they occupied a part of life she had put on a shelf long ago and not looked at since. Not out of grief exactly, out of the accumulation of years during which the decision had kept not getting made. And then one day she looked up, and the shelf was very high, and she had forgotten what was on it. Priya had no patience for shelves. "Do you want to hear a joke?" she asked, turning to Nadia with the full force of her attention. "Yes," Nadia said. She meant it. The joke involved a frog, a calculator, and a library, and the ending made no logical sense whatsoever. Nadia caught the last 3 words, and understood none of the connective tissue. Dylan burst out laughing, not politely, not quietly, The kind of laugh that came from the chest and didn't care who heard it. And Nadia laughed because he did. The sound came out of her and surprised her, the way a word surprises you when you say it in a language you thought you had forgotten. It sounded different than she remembered. Priya beamed. Nadia decided right then that Priya Hayes was one of the most effective people she had ever met. They ate. The conversation moved the way conversations move when one member of the party is 7 and has opinions about everything. The quality of the syrup, the unfairness of bedtimes, the current emotional state of Gerald the octopus, who was apparently going through a lot right now. Nadia listened. She asked questions that were genuine. She found she wanted to hear the answers. At some point the pancakes were finished, and Priya climbed back into the booth and fell asleep, with her head on Dylan's leg, and Gerald tucked under her arm. Dylan did not move. He shifted his weight by approximately nothing, enough to be comfortable, not enough to disturb her. He and Nadia continued talking in low voices. They talked about things that were not on her usual list of subjects, not companies or boards or funding rounds. He asked about London. She told him about it with more feeling than she expected. The particular light in winter, the specific smell of the underground, the way she had arrived at 26 knowing exactly what she was going to do with her life, and discovering within 18 months that what she had planned and what she actually wanted were two related but distinct things. He told her about teaching, not the version of teaching that shows up in speeches about noble professions, the real version, the particular frustration of watching a student understand something for the first time and knowing you can take almost no credit for it, the way a classroom has its own weather. The Tuesday afternoon 2 years ago when he had taught the same lesson 3 times without once thinking about anything except the lesson, and had driven home realizing it was the first day in 8 months he had not felt like he was underwater. She did not ask about Maya, not that night. She understood, without needing it explained, that there was a door there, and that it would open when it was ready. But she felt the shape of it. She felt the weight of the thing he was carrying, not because he showed it to her, but because she had learned, in 38 years, what a person looks like when they have been through something large and are still in the process of coming back from it. She recognized it the way you recognize a place you have read about but never visited, something familiar that is not yours. Priya made a small sound in her sleep. Dylan looked down at her. The expression on his face was something Nadia did not have language for, not the language she used daily, a different kind. She reached across the table without thinking about it. Not toward him, toward Gerald the octopus, who had begun sliding sideways off the bench. She caught him by one of his 8 different colored arms and settled him back against the wall. She noticed what her hand had done. She looked at it for a moment. Dylan looked up and saw her noticing. He did not say anything. He smiled, quietly, and looked back down at his daughter. The diner hummed around them. The pie case turned slowly. Outside the window, Chicago went on being Chicago. Nadia sat in the warm booth with the noise around her and the quiet at the table, and something moving in her chest that she had not felt in a very long time. She did not name it. She was not ready to name it. But she stayed. She stayed until Priya woke up and announced she was ready to go home. She stayed until they put on their coats in the entrance, and Dylan helped Priya with her zipper, and Priya said goodbye to Nadia with the solemnity of someone concluding a very important meeting. "You can come again," Priya told her. "Gerald liked you." "How can you tell?" Nadia asked. "He told me," Priya said, with complete sincerity. Dylan caught Nadia's eye over the top of his daughter's head. She caught his. They looked at each other for exactly the length of time it takes to understand that something has already begun, whether or not either of you has said the word. She drove home doing math she could not finish. She sat in her car outside her building for 4 minutes. Then she went upstairs, and the apartment was exactly as she had left it, neutral and quiet and precise. And she stood in the middle of it and felt its silence in a way she could not recall feeling before. Not because it was new, because she was. Dylan did not play games. This was something Nadia came to understand about him, in the way you understand things that are demonstrated rather than declared. He did not disappear for days to appear interested. He did not manufacture uncertainty. He texted when he was thinking of her, which was not constantly, but was consistent. And the texts were not performances. They were just what he was actually thinking, a line from something he was reading, a question that had occurred to him on his drive in. Once, a photograph of the safety pin on his coat, replaced by a new one that was slightly larger, with the caption, "Upgraded." She looked at that one for longer than she would admit. He asked her, 4 weeks after the diner, whether she wanted to keep seeing him. They were walking along the lakefront on a Saturday afternoon in early November, the kind of cold that was honest about itself, the wind coming off the water with no intention of apologizing. Priya was at a birthday party. They had the afternoon. He did not lead up to it. There was no careful construction of the question, no softening of the edges. He just said it, looking out at the lake. "I like being around you. Do you want to keep doing this?" Not "are we serious?" Not "where is this going?" Not "what do you want from me?" Just the simplest version of the question. Present tense, no pressure attached. She walked beside him for a moment without answering. The water was gray and moving. She thought about what it would mean to say yes, not the surface of it, the dinners, the weekends, the practical logistics of two busy people with complicated lives finding space for each other. She thought about what was underneath that, what it meant for a person like her to say yes, what she would be agreeing to carry, what she would be agreeing to risk. She had spent 11 years being very good at not risking things. She had convinced herself that this was strength, and some of it was. But some of it was something else, something smaller and more frightened that she had dressed up in the clothes of discipline so she would not have to call it by its real name. "I'm not easy to be with," she said. "I'm not asking for easy," he said. "I don't have a good history with this." "Neither do I," he said. "My reference material is pretty limited right now." She looked at him when he said that. He was still looking at the lake. The wind was doing something to his hair that he was ignoring. His coat was buttoned to the top, the new safety pin catching what little light there was. She thought about the last person she had loved. She had not let herself think about it often. It was one of those things she had put in a container and sealed. But walking next to Dylan, with his honest question still sitting in the air between them, she found the container was not as far away as she thought. His name was Owen. They had been together for 2 years, which was the longest she had managed. He had been patient with her in the beginning, and then had stopped being patient in the way that people stop when they realize patience is being treated as a strategy rather than a gift. He had not left dramatically. He had left in the way that was almost worse, quietly, with dignity, in a way that made it impossible to be angry at him, and therefore made it very easy to be angry at herself. The text message she sent him had taken 11 seconds to write. It said, "I think we both know this isn't working." She had sent it on a Thursday afternoon between 2 meetings. She had not cried. She had gone to her next meeting and been, by every external measure, completely fine. She had been completely fine for 2 years after that. Fine like an apartment with nothing out of place. She stopped walking. The lake moved. A bird crossed far overhead. "I ended something once," she said. "Someone I was with. I sent a text. I didn't call. I didn't explain. 11 seconds. And I still don't know. I genuinely don't know whether that says something about who I was then or something about who I am. And the fact that I can't tell bothers me more than the thing itself." He had stopped when she stopped. He was listening the way he always listened, like what she said was the only thing in the room. He did not rush to reassure her. He did not say she was being too hard on herself, or that people do all kinds of things, or any of the comfortable things that would have let her off the hook. He looked at her for a moment, and then he said, "That sounds like something you've been carrying for a while." She exhaled. Something in her chest moved, shifted, like a room rearranging itself. "Yes," she said. "You don't have to carry it every second," he said. "You can just set it down sometimes. You don't have to figure it out today." She looked at him. "Is that how you do it? With everything you've been through?" He was quiet for a moment. The lake answered for him, briefly, with wind. "Some days," he said. "Other days I pack an octopus in my daughter's bag and pretend I'm holding it together. Mostly she's the one holding it together. She's significantly better at this than I am." Nadia made a sound that was not quite a laugh but was close enough to one that it surprised her. "She really is," she said. He looked at her then, directly, the same way he had looked at her across that bar on the first night, like she was a question he was genuinely interested in and was not going to pretend otherwise. "So," he said, Yes or no? She looked at the lake. She looked at him. She thought about the bar where she had not wanted to go, and the water she had not intended to drink, and the question that had kept her awake. Do you like it? She thought about a diner, and a joke about a frog and a calculator that made no sense. She thought about an octopus named Gerald. She thought about 11 seconds and a text message, and a container she had sealed and carried for 2 years, and had never once set down. She set it down. Yes, she said. Not loudly, not dramatically. The word left her like something exhaled after a very long breath held. He nodded. He did not say anything else. He started walking again, and she fell into step beside him, and the lake kept moving beside them, indifferent and permanent and vast. It was the bravest thing she had done in 11 years. It did not feel like bravery. It felt like relief. 6 months is not long enough to change a person, but it is long enough for a person to discover who they were before they forgot. Nadia Cross showed up in Dylan's kitchen on a Sunday in April, in a way that would have seemed, to the version of herself from the previous October, completely unrecognizable. She was sitting at the kitchen table with tax documents on one side and a papier-mâché project on the other. The project was a volcano. The volcano's name was Carol. Nadia had not named it. Priya had named it with the decisive authority of someone who does not need a reason, and Nadia had accepted this without question, which was itself a change. She was helping with Carol. She was wearing a t-shirt she had found in the back of Dylan's closet, soft from years of washing, slightly too large for her, with a faded logo for something she did not recognize. She had picked it up and put it on and not thought about it once. This was notable because Nadia Cross had, for approximately the last 11 years, thought very carefully about everything she wore and the impression it would make, and the version of herself it communicated. The faded t-shirt communicated nothing except that she was comfortable. She was not sure, until this moment, how long it had been since she had been comfortable. "You're putting too much on the base," Priya told her, with the calm authority of a person who had been making Carol for 2 weeks and therefore considered herself the leading expert. "I'm following the instructions," Nadia said. "I changed the instructions," Priya said. "When?" "Tuesday," Priya said. "The new ones are in my head." Nadia looked at her. "Can you share them?" Priya considered this fairly. Less paper on the bottom, more on the sides. "Carol is wide. She's not tall yet." "Yet," Nadia repeated. "She's going to be tall," Priya said, with complete confidence. "She just needs time." From across the kitchen, Dylan was making something involving the stove and a pan and a level of focus that meant he was either cooking something that required attention or thinking about something that had nothing to do with cooking. He did both with the same expression. Nadia had learned to tell the difference by whether his shoulders were tight. His shoulders were relaxed. She noticed that she noticed things like this now. Small things. The particular way he moved in a room he was comfortable in. The sound of his voice from another room. The sound of Priya's footsteps, which were never quiet and never apologized for it. She had moved through the last decade in an environment of her own construction, calibrated to exactly her own preferences, and she had not understood until now that the problem with a perfectly calibrated environment was that it only ever showed you yourself. This kitchen showed her other things. It was not a neat kitchen. It was a kitchen in which things were used and replaced and occasionally broken and not always replaced immediately. There was a drawing of a cat on the refrigerator that Priya had made when she was 5, with legs in the wrong places and a smile that was more enthusiasm than accuracy. And it had been on the refrigerator for 2 years and was not coming down. There was a mug on the counter that said, "World's okayest teacher," that Dylan drank coffee from every morning without irony. There were small shoes by the door, always slightly in the wrong place, always tripped over, never moved to a more logical location. It was a kitchen lived in by people who were living. She reached across the table and adjusted her approach to Carol's left side, flattening the paper more carefully the way Priya had instructed. It was not difficult work. It did not require her to be decisive or precise or remarkable. It required her to be there, paying attention, following instructions from a 7-year-old who had renamed the project rules without telling anyone. She found she did not mind at all. "Nadia," Priya said. "Yes." "Gerald wants to tell you something." Gerald was sitting at the end of the table, leaning against a stack of Dylan's marking. which was its own kind of organized chaos. His 8 different colored arms were arranged in no particular pattern. "What does Gerald want to tell me?" Nadia asked. Priya picked up Gerald and held him to her ear. She listened with great seriousness. She nodded once. "He says you're his second person now," Priya announced. Nadia looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means you're his person when his first person is busy," Priya said, as though this were a perfectly conventional system with long-established rules. "His first person is me. But when I'm doing something else, you're next. That's important. Not everyone gets to be someone's second person." Nadia looked at Gerald. His button eyes looked back with the neutral authority of a stuffed animal who has made up his mind. "I'm honored," she said. "You should be," Priya agreed, and went back to Carol. From across the kitchen, something in the pan made a sound that meant it was done. Dylan turned the heat down and stood for a moment with his back to the room, and then he looked over his shoulder at the table where his daughter was directing a grown woman in the reconstruction of a papier-mâché volcano named Carol, and he looked at them the way someone looks at a thing they did not know they were hoping for. He did not say anything. He turned back to the stove. Nadia saw it. She was getting very good at seeing things that did not need to be said. Later, after Carol had been set to dry and dinner had been eaten, and Priya had been put to bed with Gerald tucked under her arm, and the day had come to its quiet end, Nadia stood on Dylan's front steps while he held the door open behind her. The April night was cool but not cold, the particular clean smell of a city at the end of winter. "Carol's coming along," he said. "Carol's going to be extraordinary," she said. "I've been told." He smiled, the kind of smile that had, over 6 months, become something she knew the shape of. "You okay?" he asked. It was the question he asked, not "Are you happy?" Not "Isn't this wonderful?" Not "Don't you think this is working?" Just, "Are you okay?" Simple, present, real. "Yes," she said. And then, because it was true, and because she had decided some time ago to stop being careful with true things, more than okay. He looked at her. "That's something." "It's a lot, actually," she said. She went to her car. She sat in it for a moment. Then she called Layla. It rang twice. "Tell me," Layla said, because she always knew. "I'm okay," Nadia said. A pause. A long one. "How okay?" Layla said. Nadia looked out the windshield. The street was quiet. A light was on in Dylan's kitchen window. "I think I'm getting there," she said. "Nadia?" Layla's voice had something in it that was not quite a laugh and not quite a cry. Something right in the middle. "That's further than you've been in 11 years. She let the silence sit. "Yeah," she said. She sat in the car for a while after that. Not because she was sad. Not because she was confused. Just because she wanted to be still for a moment and feel the shape of where she was. She thought about October, the bar she had not wanted to go to, the glass of water, the watch she had checked at 7:54, the door she had already planned to walk out of. She thought about a safety pin on a coat and a question she could not answer. A stuffed octopus with 8 arms. A joke about a frog and a calculator that made no sense. A walk along a gray lake in November. A one-word answer that had taken everything she had. She thought about Carol, and her new instructions, and the confidence with which Priya had said, "She's just not tall yet. She needs time." She started the car. The city was still the city, lights and movement and the ordinary noise of people going about their Friday nights. She moved through it without planning her route. She just drove, and the city held her, and the night was ordinary and enormous and fine. She had not walked out of that bar expecting anything. She had gone because she loved someone who believed in her, and she had stayed because a man had asked her a question she did not know the answer to, and something in her had wanted, very badly, to figure it out. She was still figuring it out. She did not mind. That, she thought, was the whole thing. That was all of it.